Wildfires, floods, heat waves make headlines daily these days. There's a lot of buzz about climate change, with more and more people voicing their concern as the impact gets real and is felt closer home. Now, Greater Chennai Corporation's recently published Climate Change Action Plan reveals that 16% of the city area may be underwater by the turn of this century. This may put over 10 lakh people at risk. Now, a lot of us think that 2100 may be very distant. So let's talk about 5 years down the line. The study reveals that nearly 30% of land will be at risk of floods during heavy rains within the next 5 years. This means at least 500 slums will be flooded. Meanwhile, Chennai beaches, which people love to spend their time on, may no longer be a thing of joy, but rather a thing of the past. The report says that 100 meters of Chennai's coastline is at the risk of submersion in the next 5 years. Dharani joining us for more on this. Dharani, this report has some startling statistics and forecasts. It's a wake-up call for the largest metropolitan city in the south.
Very well said, Rohit. Some alarming numbers we are looking at. So recently the Chennai Corporation has released a climate action plan report. So it is publicly available for everyone to see. It is in their official website. So we can consider this as an official document. So it is telling that in the next 5 years there might be a 7-centimeter sea level rise, and because of this 7-centimeter sea level rise, 100 meters of the coastal sand area might go under waters permanently. So the coastal sands of the beaches in Chennai might go under the waters permanently. 100 meters of that area can go under the waters permanently. So this is what the report is citing, and it is also telling that in the next 5 years 29% of the Greater Chennai Corporation's area could be inundated because of heavy rainfall and floods due to rainfall. So this is another huge alarming number we are looking at. Remember, Chennai has had multiple high level flooding in the past 5-6 years. In 2015, for the first time, Chennai had huge floods. The public were not able to access even the basic necessities for around 2 weeks. And then in 2021 also, last year, December month, we saw heavy flooding in Chennai due to rainfall. And because of that also, for almost 1 month, the routine life of the public of Chennai was completely, shaken. And right now, this report is coming as a big shocker to the people of Chennai. This report tells that in the next, in the next 8 years, that is in the 2000s, almost 16% of the Greater Chennai Corporation's area, that is 67 square kilometer, will is at the risk of going underwater permanently. So huge numbers we are looking at, some alarming numbers we are looking at. So the Tamil Nadu government as a whole has been, putting up a lot of efforts, policies and schemes to tackle climate change. In fact, there is a separate ministry for environment and climate, change in the ministry of, Tamil Nadu government. But, these numbers coming to light now will definitely, put a scare in the minds of Chennai people. And we'll have to wait and see how the Chennai Corporation is going to act upon it. Because right now we have these numbers in our hands, and it's very scary, it's very evident. But we'll have to wait and see what the Chennai Corporation is going to do in terms of short term and long term, because as you told, in the next 5 years there's a short term a problem in front of us. In the next 5 years the sea level might rise 7 centimeters, leading to 100 meter immersion of the coastal land. So there's a very short term problem we're looking at, and short term solutions are also necessary. But when you talk about the long term problems, again the Chennai Corporation has to separately draw and bring out a long-term plan. So we'll have to see what they're going to do, how it's going to pan out. But definitely a very important and a very certain issue that needs to be discussed at this point in time, very indeed.
All right, Dharani, we leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us with those details from Chennai. So this report is warning of serious consequences of climate change. Joining us to discuss the impact of climate change and how we can mitigate that impact is GP Sharma, President of Skymet, and Dr. Sudhir Krishna, former Secretary of Ministry of Urban Development. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for speaking with Mirror Now this afternoon. Mr. Sharma, to you first, 100 meters of coastline at risk of submersion in the next 5 years. The crisis is here and now, not in some distant future. What do you make of this report by the Greater Chennai Corporation?
Rohit, whatever fears, the Dharani expressed just now, they're true. I think the climate change is extending a lot of warnings day in, day out, every day to us. But I think, as the WMO chief, he said on the WMO day this year, that the world is taking a walk. We are taking a sleeping walk towards the climate catastrophe, because nothing much is being done. Okay. The worldwide the warnings are emanating, like right from Arctic to Antarctica. Do talk about those icebergs are breaking, even Thwaites Glacier, which we also call it as a doomsday glacier, that's deteriorating. All this is contributing to rise in the sea levels. Okay, global rise in the temperatures on the count of climate change. Obviously, what it will lead to, it will rise the temperatures on account of whether the glaciers are melting, the snow is melting, the mountainous snow also will decrease. All this will ultimately go in for rise in the sea level, and that is what the fears have been expressed, and Chennai is no different from that. We have already experienced, there is a rise in the sea level. You see, there is to tell you frankly, there is a La Nina event going on, which is a cooling of the sea temperatures, okay, in the Pacific for the last about 2 years. Despite that, in spite of that La Nina, 2021 was again one of the warmest year, hottest out of 7 years. Means even this little bit of cooling which is there over the oceans, whether over Indian Ocean or Pacific Ocean, that doesn't suffice. It is not meeting our requirement. Climate change is huge, and it is raising the temperatures. On account of this rise in the temperature, yes, this threat is very, very imminent, that the coastline, including of Tamil Nadu, it is at risk. Whatever fears have been expressed, there will be a reality. It's going to be true. The weather is changing very quickly, very fast, rapid changes, high intensity, high impact weather events, they are there. Okay, so we have to take the action.
So
we got we got to take timely action still.
Yes,
okay,
Mr. Sharma, we'll talk about action in just a bit. I just want to focus on the findings of this report. Dr. Krishna, let me bring you in this conversation. Let's talk a little bit about what's expected by the turn of this century. That's what the report says. It says that 16% of the area will be permanently inundated or is likely to be permanently inundated. 10 lakh people to be impacted. The report says that there's major risk of permanent loss of shelter. So how will we tackle the displacement of people as a result of climate change?
I think this report is very timely, and it is an eye-opener not only for Chennai, but it should be taken note of by all the coastal cities of the country. In fact, the situation is that global warming is an international global phenomenon, and it is being examined by all the countries put together at IPCC level, that is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And they had given a report in 2019, wherein they projected, the IPCC projected that by 2100, the sea level will rise by something like 1 meter, between 0.6 and 1 meter all across the world. And some cities will be impacted more, and Chennai seems to be in the greater risk region. It is because Chennai is like, the undulation is very slow. The slope of Chennai east coast is slow, and therefore the gushing in of water will be much faster and much more deeper into the inland area. Therefore, the developments on the coast have to be very carefully observed and regulated. We are doing a lot of activities, like high-rise buildings are coming up close to the coastline, which put pressure on the coast. We are doing excavation activities by way of, or groundwater extraction or oil rigs, or we are making the seaport development. All that is lowering the level of the land mass. So on one hand, water level is rising. On the other hand, the land mass is depressing. So the gushing in of water will have very severe impact.
Yes.
It is necessary that city like Chennai should do two things at their level. One is that they should halt further development, which should, in the normal course, development has to take place, but normal activities should not be allowed, like concrete buildings, etc., should be looked once again, and low weight structures which can be installed easily and removed easily. Like in Japan, they do that in the
Yes.
cyclone areas. So that is one activity. High rise should be totally prevented, avoided in these areas, and major construction activity. And at number two is that whatever is already there, like you are displaying here on the screen, that thermal power plants may need to be replaced. So we should not replace the thermal power plant and things
Yes.
like that, right? But we should have an action plan ready, that in case of need, when the sea level shows such tendency that in a year or 2 years it will inundate the power plant or similar infrastructure, then what fallback arrangements are there?
Yes.
That has to be done, rather than not doing anything or removing them right away, because you can't remove everything overnight. So these two things. Thirdly, while IPCC international activity, it is necessary for Indian cities to sit together. All Indian coastal cities should form a conclave, and of course, Government of India and the Ministry of Urban Development, or
Yes.
what is now called Housing and Urban Affairs, they should convene a conclave of the cities from time to time to discuss the impact of climate change on the city in various ways. We should, on one hand, we have intergovernmental discussion. On the other hand, we have no discussion about this
Right.
within the country. So therefore, this will go a long way in helping the cities prepare for the climate
All right,
change.
important points there, Dr. Krishna, important points you've raised over there. We'll look into that, but let me read another very important aspect from this report, what the report says. Let me read it from the report. It says that disaster relief centers are most prone to get inundated, followed by community halls and government schools. And the report goes on to say that most important infrastructure to provide shelter in hazards are found to be most prone. So, Mr. Sharma, when the disaster hits, the disaster relief infrastructure will be the first to be hit. That's a double whammy.
Absolutely true. Okay. You see, most of the time, the coastline is vulnerable. All along the coast, whether it's the eastern side or western side of Indian region. Eastern side, yes, including Tamil Nadu, that is more vulnerable than the western one because of the various storms and the weather systems and the other things which take place. They are more vulnerable. So obviously these disaster agencies also, they have to prepare accordingly, and they possibly park them, shelter them close to the coastline. Those people, they are more at risk. And this topic which we are discussing, that the sea level is going to rise, and the rise of let's say 1 meter, if it happens, as we say, by the end of the century, it's going to be catastrophic. Okay, it will be possibly beyond the purview of the disaster management agencies to tackle the catastrophe of such a magnitude. There is much more needed on this. Okay, every time we say that we need to cut down the carbohydrates, but then the pollution as such, but then we are pumping so much in the atmosphere that forget about stopping that. There is additionally, we are pumping that much of carbon in the atmosphere as such. So my fear is
right.
The coastline of Tamil Nadu is much more vulnerable even than other places, because it depends at what level they are. As he mentioned, also the secretary also mentioned that some places are below the sea level, but some are a little above the sea level. But Chennai, the slope as such, when he mentioned that it's lower than what the normal is, it makes more vulnerable, that we possibly heading for more problematic scenarios in future also. The weather pattern because of the climate change is changing. To tell you, normally we used to say the southwest monsoon season is not that much punishing for Tamil Nadu, okay, because it's in the rain shadow area. To tell you, this will be the fourth successive southwest monsoon when the rains are large excess. This time, this season, can you imagine? It's about 65% in excess southwest monsoon season. Where will all this water go? Okay, in case we do not make sufficient arrangements, sufficient measures we take, it is going to create problems. And then obviously all these things which we keep mentioning, urbanization, development, alteration of the
All right.
landscape in the name of the
Yes.
development, etc., they need to be stopped. Okay, it's a high time that put a stop to that. Otherwise,
Yes.
we are heading for big problems. Yeah.
All right. We're heading for a big problem if we don't change gears and look at climate change. Dr. Krishna, there are some solutions that have been suggested, like decarbonizing the electric grid, increasing the use of renewable energy, energy-efficient buildings, sustainable waste management and transportation, which will include 100% fossil fuel-free public transportation and 80% of all trips by walking, cycling or public transit. These are the solutions suggested by this report. Now, I want to ask you, is this possible? And second, is it enough?
As far as possibility is concerned, I think it is absolutely possible. We can do, in fact, even more, because technology is developing very fast, and the solar panel and solar energy harnessing is becoming far more viable and economical than it was before. Ever before. And with the volume that India offers, volume of activities that India offers, it also becomes possible to harness the economy of scale in development of the technology or harnessing the technology. Therefore, harnessing solar energy, and Chennai is blessed with not only solar energy, also with wind energy as well as ocean energy, tidal energy. So therefore, all these alternative sources of energy on one hand, and definitely we must promote non-motorized transport in every city. I mean, Chennai is very important because it is highly vulnerable and it's a very large city. But please note that there are cities or there are habitats or territories like Lakshadweep, which will completely vanish, while Chennai will have only some parts submerged. All the islands of Lakshadweep will vanish in the same scenario.
Yes.
And therefore, you see, alertness has to be there everywhere. The same solution has to be extended everywhere. But the solutions which you have mentioned...
But Dr. Krishna, I want to ask you one question. I'm sorry, I'm running short on time, but I want to ask you this. Like citizens ask, I mean, climate change is real. It's here. We can see the effects of climate change in our cities, in our country. Now, I want to ask you, as citizens, what can people do to contribute their bit to mitigate the impact of climate change?
Well,
people like you and me.
Yes, citizen and government have to work like bicycle, two wheels of the bicycle. Both have to work in tandem and both have to work together. Alone, one will not. Government proposing something without citizen participating cannot do. Suppose citizen want to use the bicycle or walkways, and there are no good walkways. If you can't walk safely, and then what is the purpose of walking? Similarly, you don't have cycle paths properly, then how to use the bicycle? So they both ways. And when there are bicycle paths, definitely along with bicycle paths, we should have metro rails, connectivity of mass transit systems like BRTS, metro rail. So you don't need to use your car at all. There is no need to use car, whether it is electric car or petrol-driven car. Don't need to use it. Use the bicycle to use for half kilometer.
Right.
To reach the metro station or bus station and go to the bus station and again get a bicycle there, which is available on rent, and go to your place and so on. Then there are transit-oriented development. Metro station and bus station become the hub of a lot of activities where you have shops and shopping complexes and many things at the metro station or bus station itself. So you don't have to go anywhere. Go for shopping
right.
to metro station. Like many things are possible. But as I said, the government and people have to work in tandem. And many things are possible. It is absolutely possible.
All right. So government and people need to work in tandem. The question is whether there is a will, A, for the governments and the authorities to act on climate change, whether that will be a priority. In elections, after the elections, we see there is no climate change discussion. There are discussions on everything else under the sun, but climate change is not discussed. It's not a priority, but we will keep raising these issues because climate change is real and here to stay. GP Sharma and Dr. Sudhir Krishna, thanks very much for speaking to us and sharing your perspective on this story. All right.